Welcome back to growingmicrogreens.com. We've got a series of videos here on how to grow your own amazingly fun and delicious and healthy microgreens. What we're going to do in this video in the series, we're going to talk about how to harvest and rinse and prepare microgreens and get them ready to eat. They're delicious. Now, one cool idea with microgreens is a lot of times you can just pinch off a little bit of microgreen. This is micro cilantro here, and you can just eat that right out of the tray. Spectacular. What you're going to find about most microgreens is the flavor intensity of microgreens is a lot stronger than the flavor intensity of a full adult crop. So if you've ever tasted cilantro, you know what it tastes like. Micro cilantro has a lot more flavor intensity. If you ever tasted arugula, arugula has this really slight hint of kind of peppery, a little bit of a spice. Micro arugula, super spicy. Right? Just very, very cool flavor intensity at this microgreen stage. Now this is a half-harvested crop here of micro cilantro. And it's beautiful, ready to go. That's about cilantro grows a little bit more slower. This is probably 12, 13, 14 days of micro cilantro. Cilantro is a fairly slow germinating seed, but let's talk about how to harvest it. And this is a soil-based crop, and this technique would absolutely apply to any soil-based crop like cilantro. And all you're going to do to harvest micro cilantro or any soil-based crop is you're going to use the haircut method. Pair of scissors. And what we'll do is let's grab a corner of this. You can kind of pull it up, and you can see here that the whole mat of soil, right, has been kind of tied together by the roots. So it's okay certainly to lift it up just a little bit, but all we're going to do is just grab a nice little handful of cilantro, and you can see this guy still has a cilantro seed stuck to him. So we got to give that a rinse and make sure all of those seeds are pulled out of our micro cilantro. We just discard that if we want right at that stage, but we'll catch it in the rinse. So just a haircut, and we're going to toss that in a colander, right? Because we need to give this a good solid rinse, but what you can do is just clip your micro cilantro just like you're giving it a haircut at the barber. You want to give plenty of space for the root line. You don't want to grab any of the dirt in that process. Keep the soil away from your micros and where you clip them. But that's all you've got to do to get a nice harvest of micro cilantro. That's absolutely perfect. If you add that into a salsa, if you add that into just a hint, couple of sprigs of that into a microgreen salad, just spectacular. That's just amazing, really, really intense flavor. And that's the haircut method. You can see there's nothing to that, right? Very easy approach. Anytime we're dealing with a soil-based micro, like beets, for example, let's harvest a couple of micro beets. This is, I believe, Detroit Red, which is a nice, inexpensive beet. The same basic process. All we're going to do is we're going to harvest that. Now you can see here, I pulled one up in the process of doing it. I want to get that soil out of there, so let's just clip that guy off with a fingernail or whatever and discard. And you can see here, in this case, same kind of deal. There's a beet seed attached to that little guy, right? So you could discard that, you could pull it off at that stage. And let's put that in, let's mix that beet in with our micro cilantro, and you get a really nice color combination here. When you're harvesting your microgreens, we got a little soil in there. When you're harvesting your microgreens, right, you mix those around. Beet and some of the chards, the rainbow chard, even a little bit of rhubarb, which has the very intense tang that you're familiar with rhubarb, and it has a beautiful color. You can see really how cool those microgreens look. Let me give you one other little tip when you're harvesting your microgreens. When you harvest these guys, don't harvest them when it's a warm day, a lot of temperature on there. What you want to do is you want to harvest these guys when it's nice and cool, early in the morning, in the evening. If you harvest these guys when the greens are too hot from sitting in the sun or in the light or whatever it happens to be, they're going to wilt very quickly. So make sure they're nice and cool, and these guys are going to stay crisp and beautiful for a long time. Okay? So that's our approach for soil-based. We're going to use the haircut method to harvest these microgreens above the soil line. So now let's talk about how to harvest two techniques to harvest microgreens hydroponically. Okay, so we got two crops here. Here we've got red acre cabbage, which is about 11 days, a little bit long. You can see a little bit of wilt in here from an earlier video where I let this guy go a little too long so we could water it, so we could see what wilt looks like. And here is a crop of broccoli. which is a really solid base microgreen. This is a really great choice to put in any microgreen salad because it's inexpensive and it's almost impossible to screw up broccoli. It is very fast and very easy grower. But normally I would let this broccoli go about 2 more days, get it to about 10 days. The leaves will be a lot bigger, more robust, but we'll go ahead and harvest a little bit out of both of these crops and show you 2 separate techniques. Okay? So what let's do is let's start with the red acre cabbage, and you can see the red acre cabbage, it's really a red cabbage. If you let this go all the way to to its full vegetable adult stage, you'd get a big head of red cabbage is what you'd get. This is what that plant looks like at the microgreen stage, and you can see the beautiful purples in here, green highlights, or green with nice purple highlights, and wait till you see the stems. What we're going to do in this case is we're going to use the haircut method, same method that we used in terms of the soil-based technique, and you'd always use a soil-based technique or a haircut method in the soil-based technique. Now you can see these micros have a nice, really mellow purple color to the stems, which is just beautiful. They're a great accent and a great highlight in any microgreen salad. So I'm going to toss that in the colander with some of our soil-based kit, and you can see we're getting really nice contrast, really beautiful collection of microgreens there. It's going to be an awesome, very colorful, very attractive, delicious salad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of our red cabbage, and using the haircut method, I'm just going to give this guy a nice little trim, and we'll throw a lot of our micros, and if you're a little more patient and deliberate about it, of course, you're going to salvage most of these microgreens and not lose the amount that I'm losing because I'm going real fast. And you'll notice here, in this guy, I uprooted it, right? I pulled that guy all the way out of the growing medium, the sure-to-grow pad. And that's okay. It doesn't hurt you. Eat the root without any difficulty. There's not going to be really any problem there. But again, you want to avoid most of the root when you can. So a nice haircut method, just be cautious and not uproot too much of that. And if you do find one, you can pull it out of there, trim the root off, break it off with a fingernail, whatever it happens to be. So again, let's kind of mix that up a little bit, and you can see the really, really cool combination of colors. Imagine serving that as a salad with a couple of tomato wedges and maybe a side of avocado. Never seen anything like that, right? Beautiful, nice, wonderful looking highlights. That's a really good looking microgreen salad, and it's going to be an interesting combination of flavors with the cilantro in there. Now, broccoli is a really base microgreen. It doesn't taste like broccoli. It's got a really fresh, crisp taste to it, and we're going to use a different technique in this case. We're going to use the uprooting technique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift up the corner of that mat, and you can see here where the roots have kind of established themselves, and what I'm going to do in this case is I'm just going to grab that mat and I'm going to uproot a section of these micros. And you can see what I've done here. I'm going to grab another colander for the root mass. You can see all the seeds in here. So I've got the whole plant from root to the leaves. And with that, I'm just going to grab that and I'm going to trim the roots off at that point. This technique is my preferred technique because it's going to make sure that I have the least amount of waste. I'm going to use the least amount, or I'm going to grab almost all those microgreens, and I can toss those directly into the salad. And again, you just grab a good handful of those microgreens and just uproot them directly out of there. You want to be kind of cautious. You don't want to bruise the leaves, right? But once you do that, you can just trim the root mass off and take those micros and drop them straight into the colander, and you can see the nice dark green of that broccoli and the really contrast of the white stem there. Now we've got a beautiful looking microgreen salad in the making. And it's, you know what, it's a flavor combination, it's a salad experience that you've never had before. Now you use that on a sandwich, right? Put that on a hamburger, put that on an egg salad sandwich, whatever it happens to be, in place of lettuce or cucumber, whatever you'd use. It's a lot healthier, it's a lot more fresh, the flavor is a lot more intense, just spectacular and a lot of fun. Easy, fun to harvest, and very different. You can notice here from this tray, you see how cleanly that area was harvested. We've got our waste over here in this other colander. Just toss that, compost it, whatever you want to do with it. But there's no problem allowing that to continue to grow. So, and same for the haircut method. right? We've trimmed this. Will this stuff regrow? In the haircut method, you know, you'll get some regrowth. Some of these guys will recover and grow back, but you're going to have a really amazingly scraggly crop in a second growth. You can certainly let it regrow. There's no problem, but typically once I've harvested a tray all the way through, typically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and dispose of the mat, and I'm going to grab a fresh sure to grow pad and I'm going to plant another crop. And you can rotate crops when you plant and sow the seed. You can do half a crop of broccoli, half a crop of you know, whatever else you want to do, arugula, whatever it happens to be, and mix and match. You can section off sections of the tray. If you'll check our website, growingmicrogreens.com, you'll see that we have a couple of mixes and we have a couple of seed assortments, lots of different collections of seed to allow you to experiment with all of the different really interesting colors and flavors. This is just really a lot of fun. It's a great, easy hobby. It's very interesting, and of course you can imagine how delicious that salad tastes. A little bit of cilantro in there to add some flavor. You've got the beet and the red cabbage to add some color. And of course, the base crop in there is going to be our broccoli. Spectacular, right? You can mix, you can match, you can do all kinds of stuff. Now, before you go straight and serve that, keep in mind, you've got a lot of shells. You might have you know, some soil that got picked up in the soil. Grown crops, so we want to give that a good rinse. Okay, so we've got our harvested microgreens, and we're going to give them a good thorough rinse. The reason we need to rinse these guys is in the case of your soil-based crops, we want to make sure that we won't have any soil in with the microgreens. We want to rinse all that away. And in the case of most other types of micros, what you're going to have is you're going to have some seed shell, like you've got on that guy, right? And we want to get as much of that out of there as possible. Not that it would hurt you, it probably wouldn't, but again, you can see in the case of that beet, that's an unpleasant thing to chomp into. So we're going to give these a good rinse. Now, most of those seed and hulls will float, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a nice good bowl and we're going to have a colander that will fit nestled nicely inside that bowl. So the first thing we're going to do is let's turn on our water. We want to make sure we got cold. Nice cold water. If you rinse in warm, you're going to get a lot of wilt. Cold as you can make it, okay? So what we're going to do is we're just going to give this guy a real good solid rinse and rinse away any soil that might have gotten picked up in our soil-based kit. And again, give that a couple of really good rounds of rinsing in the colander. Beautiful. All right. Now what we're going to do is, since we've got some water in our larger bowl, now what we're going to do is we're just going to do a little submersion here. So I'm going to put my colander in there and just submerge that guy, just like that. Now what's going to happen is any seed hulls that you've got will typically float to the top where you can catch them, right? So that guy's a floater. And you can use a strainer, right, to push these micros kind of down out of the way and strain the water off. This is especially true of micros like buckwheat and sunflower. You'll typically pick up a lot of hulls in there, and if you agitate those guys a little bit, nice cold water, it's not going to hurt them or bruise them at all, but give those guys a nice agitation in there, peel them away, and then you're going to get these little floaters. There's a beet seed, right? And you can pull those guys out of there pretty easily. Now, all we're going to do is we're going to pull that guy up out of there, maybe give it a final rinse with our sprayer, and then we're going to move them over to dry. Okay, so we're back from the sink. We've got our rinsed, thoroughly rinsed microgreens, and you do want to rinse them really, really well. Now what we need to do is dry them. Before you serve them, you want to make sure they're nice and dry, and certainly if you're planning on storing them, for example, in the refrigerator, you absolutely positively want to make sure that these guys are nice and dry before you store them. Got a little water there from the rinse. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to dry these guys on a paper towel. Now you can use a real clean dish towel or whatever you want, but paper towels work really, really well. You can even dry them in the colander. So I'll show you a couple of little techniques to dry these guys. So we've got our really thoroughly well rinsed microgreens here in the colander. So technique number one is just let them drip dry in the colander and come, you know, every little while and you know, make sure you got all the water out of there and just aerate them a little occasionally. And you want to leave these in a nice cool spot, maybe even let them drip dry in the refrigerator. But let these guys dry out and give them as much air as you possibly can. and just let these guys dry out normally, right? You can do it in the colander. My preferred technique is typically spread these guys out on a paper towel like this, right? Got nice, beautiful micros there. You can see how they're damp. And what we're going to do is we're going to just take those guys and spread them out on the paper towel and just let these guys dry. You can let them air dry. If you're in a hurry, put a fan on low speed on these guys and they will dry out. And when they are dry, you'll see that they're nice and dry. There won't be any dampness left on these guys. If they get hot, or if you've harvested them when it's too hot, they'll wilt. And you want to avoid wilt on that. Okay, so you just put them on a paper towel and dry them like that, walk away for an hour, hour and a half, come back. They'll be nice and dry, ready to go, ready to serve. But a couple of easy techniques to store them. You could store them in a ye old Ziploc bag and put them in the crisper refrigerator. They will store as long as typically any other regular vegetable would. Lettuce, for example, right? Or you can gather these guys up and store them in the refrigerator in a nice regular Tupperware type bowl. No problem at all. Simple, easy way to store those guys, and they'll keep, again, as long as regular lettuce would. If you see any hint of kind of sliminess or areas that just don't look healthy, then obviously you're going to discard that like you discard any vegetable that stayed in the refrigerator too long. But keeping these guys 3, 4, 5, 6 days shouldn't be really any difficulty at all if they're truly dry, nice and cool. And so, with that, that is the whole process of all the way from pH balancing your water, from the first video in the series, all the way through to harvesting, rinsing, and storing your delicious microgreens. You can check growingmicrogreens.com. You can take a look at the instruction sheet for a lot of sandwich and salad and recipe ideas, and experiment with it. Have fun. And you know what? Send us an email from time to time. You can find our email address on growingmicrogreens.com. Tell us what recipes you've used. Tell us your experiences. We provide support through email on growing, help you grow them. Hope you enjoy it. Have a lot of fun with it. Check us out at growingmicrogreens.com for a full line of growing kits, of a huge assortment of seeds and mixes. We've got growth lamps. We've got all the pH balancing products you need. Everything you need to grow and harvest your own microgreens in your own kitchen. Really fun countertop gardening.